So we're talking about operations with integers. We've already covered addition and we've already covered subtraction. So now let's get into multiplication. And maybe you didn't know that you can actually represent this with a number line as well. So if I do something like 3 times 2, I'll use the dot. And I'll put my 0 there to start. And what this is meaning really is I need to take the number 2 3 times. It's repeated addition. So I'm going to put a 2 here. And I'm going to say there's 1, 2. And if I go 2 more, I'm at 4. And if I go 2 more, I'm at 6. So it's repeated addition. It's the number 2, right? It's the number 2 added 3 times. 3 times 2. Well, this can apply the same way in the negative direction. So let's say we have 3, I'll use parentheses. 3 times negative 2. This notation means 3 times negative 2. So we can envision that the same way, where we have 0 and we have negative 2. So now we're just doing the same thing. It's just in the negative side, right? So if we go 2 more, negative 4. If we go 2 more, negative 6, right? So it's 3 groups of negative 2. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. So this is positive 6. This is negative 6. And one thing that will always be true when you're multiplying is that when you're multiplying two numbers, right? We have two numbers here. If you have one positive and if you have one negative, it's always going to be a negative number. You're always going to have this scenario where you're going multiple times into that negative land. Okay? So the problem kind of comes in when we start doubling up on the negatives. It's not a problem. We can handle it. Let's say we have negative 3. I'll put it in parentheses. Negative 3 times negative 4. So the way I think it's good to think about this is the opposite, right? Negative can mean the opposite. The opposite of 3 times negative 4. Well, we just saw what happened if we did a positive times a negative. We would go this way, right? A positive times a negative gets us into the negative land. But if we're doing a negative times a negative, it's the opposite of that. So this is like really going not this way, but it's going this way. 4, 8, 12. The negatives, when we multiply two negatives, it's the opposite of the opposite, which is a positive. Negative times a negative is always going to be a positive. So it's 3 groups of 4. So two negative numbers multiplied together will be a positive number. Now, the language that I always try to avoid is 2 negatives make a positive, because if I return back to addition, negative 4 plus negative 5. Remember, when you're adding two negatives, it goes more into the negative land. We're just adding that. This would be negative 9. But if we are multiplying two negatives, like negative 4 times negative 5, then it's the opposite of a negative. In this case, it would be a positive 20. So avoid the language 2 negatives make a positive. Try to envision what's really happening on the number line.